again, watch friends. Welcome back. Friends, relatives, and watch collectors, these three categories are not mutually exclusive, by the way, often ask me for watch advice. What watch should I buy? Of course, there's no one-size-fits-all answer, so I ask a few questions, such as, how much interaction, some people would say hassle, do you want with your watch? Helps decide quartz, mechanical, and automatic or manual wind. And what is your budget? That's obvious. Finally, what purpose do you plan for your watch? Helps dictate the style. Doing this repeatedly got me thinking about what under $500 watches would I, as a bona fide watch collector / nerd, not be embarrassed to wear, and would be good candidates for both the watch newbie as well as a more experienced collector. So here are my top 5 choices. Clearly there are many other possibilities, but this is a good starting point, I think. I've done reviews of most of these pieces, and will put links in the description for each. The Seiko Sarb comes in 3 flavors. A black dial Sarb 033, white dial Sarb 035, and a green dial Sarb 017. The most popular is the black dial version, and it just squeaks in at under $500 price limit because it's increased in price by a good 30% over the last year. This is due to the 3 models being discontinued by Seiko. They're still readily available, but for how long, no one knows. The 033 uses the trusty Seiko caliber 6R15, which is used throughout Seiko's mid-level line and has a 50-hour power reserve. This movement is upscale of the 7S and 4R calibers and beats at 21,600 beats per hour. It also has hacking and hand winding, which are not available on the lesser Seiko in-house movements. My particular Sarb 033 is running plus 8 seconds per day, although Seiko specs this movement at plus 25 or minus 15 seconds per day. I strongly believe that the Seiko 6R15 caliber is the equal of the iconic Swiss 2824-2 that powers a plethora of Swiss brands that cost in the hundreds to the low thousands apiece. At the core of the Seiko product line, not too expensive, classy, and sporty, the Sarb 033 measures 38.4 millimeters in diameter and 11 millimeters thick. To me, just about textbook dimensions for a watch like this. It also sports a sapphire crystal, exhibition caseback, glossy black dial that gives off slightly different appearances depending upon the light, and highly polished razor-sharp Dauphine-style hands. An attractive oyster-style bracelet with double locking clasp is standard. I think what I like most about this watch, and what many others do as well, is the quiet sophistication of the piece, and that it exudes an air of understated elegance. It's not perfect, no watch is, but the Sarb is dressy enough for the office, yet sporty enough for out and about. If you want the quintessential Seiko, this is it. If you've got $200 and you want an excellent mechanical diver watch, this is my choice, the Orient Blue Ray 2. In my video review, I called it the absolute best inexpensive diver. Hyperbole, maybe, but you get a lot of watch for not much money. Sure, the bracelet is nothing to write home about, but the build quality is surprising for such an inexpensive watch, and it's 200 meters water resistant. I've taken mine while swimming in several oceans and in multiple swimming pools and never had an issue. Orient may be an unfamiliar watch brand. It's owned by Seiko, but the Orient movements are thought to be higher quality than the comparative inexpensive Seiko movements. The Blue Ray 2 uses an in-house Orient F6922. It's an automatic movement. Now, previous versions of this watch used the 46943 automatic movement, which, while robust, lack the hacking and hand winding features. Case size is just about right at 41.5 millimeters, and it's 13 millimeters thick. With a rather short lug-to-lug distance of just 46 millimeters and the curved lugs, the watch hugs the wrist, even for smaller wrists. The Blue Ray 2 offers a day-date complication, a deep blue, almost iridescent brush dial with applied indices, minimal text, and a date window at 3 o'clock. The applied logo at 12 o'clock is unusual for a watch in this price range, and it really adds a touch of class. The Ray 2 has a hardened mineral crystal and a 120-click unidirectional bezel with scallop edges and a lume pip at 12 o'clock. One of the best things about the Ray 2 is the excellent and long-lasting lume. For someone looking for their first diver watch on a budget, the Blue Ray 2 is difficult to beat. Its main competitor is the Seiko SKX007, although the Orient has an upgraded movement compared to the SKX since it has hacking and manual winding. The watch comes on a bracelet, which many people change out to a NATO or rubber strap, and it can be had with a black or blue dial. You might be surprised to see that I chose a Chinese watch as one of my top 5 watches that you'd not be embarrassed to wear. Well, you shouldn't be, at least not for the Seagull 1963 Chronograph. That's because it packs a lot of watch value in its roughly $300 price tag. First, this is an official remake of the 1963 Chinese Air Force chronograph that's been around for decades. Second, the Seagull number ST19 mechanical, hand-winding, chronograph movement uses a column wheel, which is considered to be a better chrono design and is often not found on watches in this price range. The movement is based on the Venus 175 movement and came about when the Swiss brand Minerva sold off the Venus tooling and designs to the Chinese in the mid-20th century. If you don't know, Minerva was and is considered to be a quality movement manufacturer. They, Minerva, were swallowed up by Swatch a decade or two ago and are now actually making the movements, or at least retooled Minerva movements, for the mid-level Mont Blanc brand, and are being heavily advertised that way. The Seagull ST19 ticks at 21,600 vibrations per hour and has shock protection. Power reserve is about 45 hours on a full wind without the chronograph running. The Seagull chronograph comes in a couple of versions. The one I have is the 38mm size with an acrylic crystal. There's also a 41mm size and a model with a sapphire crystal. All models have an exhibition case back so you can see the movement working. Although it's not a high-end movement, it's kind of cool looking and fun to watch with its chrome bridges, blued screws, and intricate clockworks. Case thickness is a somewhat thick 14mm. All models have a really nice cream dial with 2 subdials. One is running seconds on the left, and the other is the 30-minute counter. Blue hands and a red seconds hand complement the cream dial for a great retro look. The watch has gold-tone numbers and markers and a red star under the 12 o'clock position. The Chinese characters printed above 6 o'clock mean made in China. Finally, it's surprising to know that Tianjin Seagull is one of the world's 4 largest watch manufacturers currently in business. So the bottom line on this 1963 Seagull is that it's a fun watch with a historically significant movement. Definitely a conversation starter with a high coolness coefficient. And besides, where can you find a hand-wound column wheel chronograph for about $300? So now, moving from China to Korea, if you will, I'd like to recommend the Tisell Bauhaus. First, the design. In a way, this watch is a homage to a homage. That's not necessarily bad, at least in this case, because this Tisell honors both the Nomos Tangomat and the original Bauhaus style watches from the 1930s on up to the 1960s. As you might know, the German Bauhaus movement, as it's called, was originally an architectural style that originated in the early 1920s and 1930s, called the Bauhaus School of Design. In addition to architecture, the design philosophy eventually included graphics, consumer products, and the arts. Eschewing complicated or ornate design, the Bauhaus aesthetic favored a simple, functional aesthetic. A number of watches were made in this style, including those by Stowa, Young Hands, and more recently, Nomos. I think this style is fantastic, but if you want one of these watches, a Stowa or a Young Hands will cost close to $1,000, and a Nomos will set you back 2 or 3 times that amount, depending upon the functionality of the watch. Fortunately, this Tisell model is available for only $250, and it looks really good. So what do you get for a Bauhaus on the cheap? An automatic Japanese Miyota 915 movement, made by Citizen, which is housed in a nicely sized 38mm stainless steel case, which is only 10mm thick. The movement provides both manually winding and hacking. And there's a see-through case back, so you can see the movement do its thing, although there's hardly any finishing to be seen. The Miyota 915 is also used by a number of micro brands because it's less expensive than alternatives from, say, Sellita or Etta. There's a sapphire crystal on the front, and surprisingly, heat-treated blued hands. The dial is really quite well done, adheres to the Bauhaus aesthetic, and even includes a date at 6 o'clock, which is less intrusive than if it was placed at 3 o'clock. This is a very nice looking watch that you won't be ashamed to wear. If you can get past the lack of pedigree on the Tisell Bauhaus, you'll have an inexpensive and attractive entry into the world of Bauhaus design. Continuing our world tour, it seems, we come back to Japan. At least watches designed in Japan by a brand that is in Japan, although the actual watches may be made elsewhere in Asia. I'm speaking of Orient, which, as I mentioned, is a division of the behemoth Seagull brand. Fortunately for Orient and us watch enthusiasts on a budget, Seagull pretty much lets Orient run itself. That's a good thing. One of the best values in budget watchdom, if there is such a thing, is the Orient Bambino. This is a dress watch that can be had for a mere $200 or so. There are a plethora of models to choose from. Almost every one of them is tasteful and attractive. And Orient has even continued to upgrade the line with minimal price increases. The Bambino line is now up to version 4, although some of the previous versions are still available. With the Bambino, you pretty much choose a color, there are many, choose whether to have a date or no date style, and then decide if you want the latest version, which has hacking and manual winding, or an earlier model for slightly less, but not much less, cost than that doesn't have that. What do you get with an Orient Bambino for around $200? First, you get an in-house movement. Whether you think that's important or not, the movement is designed and built by Orient. The caliber's F6724 automatic, as in the latest Bambinos, is an automatic that allows hand winding and hacking, where the second hand stops when you pull the crown out, so you can calibrate your time, setting it to a reference time. Orient has been building their own movements for many decades. Orient also lets you choose the size that's right for you. For example, the version 4 Bambino is 42 millimeters, while previous versions were 40.5 millimeters in diameter. But regardless of size, Orient does really nice looking dials and even includes an implied logo at 12 o'clock, the supposed Orient coat of arms. A very nice touch on a watch like this. Other Bambino options include dials with indices, Roman numbers, or Arabic numerals, center seconds hand or small second subdial, and a variety of colors, as I mentioned before. So it's really quite incredible that you can get a quality, inexpensive mechanical watch for so little. The Bambino version 4 blue dial with date is selling for a mere $139 on Long Island Watch right now. That's simply amazing. If you want to dip your toe into the mechanical watch ocean for not too much money, Orient and the Bambino line should be your first choice. Hamilton is a brand that needs no introduction, as they say. It was an American mainstay for almost a century, producing its first watch in 1893. American manufacture of watches ended in 1969 when Hamilton became a Swiss brand. It's now part of the Swatch Group. The Hamilton Watch Company initially made pocket watches, and during the U.S. expansion of the railroads in the late 19th century, retained over half the market. After World War I, the market switched from pocket watches to wristwatches, and Hamilton followed suit. There are quite a few Hamilton watches available in the under $500 category. The one I own and am recommending here is the manual-wind Hamilton Khaki Field Mechanical. It's a moderately sized 38mm in diameter and only 9.5 millimeters thick, much thinner than most automatic watches in this price range. Now, this is a field watch, so it may not be appropriate for wearing to the opera or those black tie affairs. But for the office, at least the casually dressed office, it's fine. And as a weekend or sporty watch, it really fits the bill. It's got a screw-down case back, so you won't see the movement, and there's only 50 meters water resistance. But for about $250, you really can't have everything. This model comes in both a date and no date style. Mine is the date version, and the dial is highly readable, as a field watch should be. I like the discrete 13 through 24 numerals on the dial, which help me with my military time conversions. The hands have really good lume, and there's even a signed crown, and a sapphire crystal. The Khaki Field Mechanical has a great feel to it. Granted, it's by no means a high-end watch, but it does feel substantial in the hand, but light on the wrist. It's got the ETA caliber 2804-2, which has been around and is well proven. The only downside to this particular watch is the strap. I think it's ugly, and I replaced it immediately. Also, you may not be like me and actually enjoy winding your watch every day or two. If so, Hamilton has quite a few automatic versions of this model, and some more dressier versions for about $100 more. Still under the $500 limit. I don't think you'd be embarrassed to wear this watch. I'm certainly not. And actually, someone who knows watches may actually think more of you if they see this watch on your wrist. Of course, that's not why we buy watches, is it? In conclusion, the astute observer will have noticed that I mentioned 6 watches. Sorry, I just couldn't help myself. I think it's worth noting that of the 6 watches I recommended here, I own 4 of them. I'm not ashamed to wear any of them, and so should you not be ashamed as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.